3 years that I'll be showing. No, I don't know. I lived in Bangkok for about 2 years and started a series on women and the way that they live and survive. And these children and their mother live on a bridge. The Bangkok women have no welfare, have no human health services, and kind of have to do whatever they can. And sometimes life is pretty desperate for them. And I wanted to photograph them, but I didn't want to be invasive about it. And I did sit and talk to them and ask them some of the things that they need and what could I give them in exchange for taking photographs of them. And she asked me to give her a photograph. She said, I have no way to see my children when they grow up from being babies. And so I gave her the photograph, and then we returned, and she offered me flowers. This is another bridge, Mother. You can see the gutter in Bangkok. There is no covered gutters. Everything's open, and she's sitting right there over it. Her spirits were all of the women that I met in this series, even though they were poverty-stricken, the spirit was there, and the children were really prized. It's not as though you see the kind of attitudes of discipline that you see in this country with children. The children over there are very, very valuable. This is in Mexico. This is still part of the series that I've done on women's work. And this girl was so tired, she said, if I can get up in this pickup, you can take the photograph. She said, but just give me time. This is a woman painter. I really want to do things that showed how women were making their livings. This is a street musician. She's from Chile. She's playing on the streets with her husband in New York City. This is a woman who is makes aprons. She embroiders them. And she said to me, well, how many times are you going to take this? Because I've been taking several pictures. I must have used around about a roll. And she's like, how long are you going to do this? This mother is had no access to strollers. You don't see strollers among the native women in Mexico. And she was a flower seller. And I was talking to her, and she said, well, take a picture of the baby. This is Rigoberta Menchú. She was the Nobel Prize winner. She's from Guatemala. She invited me to come to Oaxaca when she had a conference for the indigenous women from South America, Central America, and all the way from Alaska. And I was able to get photographs of not only her, but many of the women at the conference. This is a theatrical group in Chiapas. They asked me to come and take photographs of them, and I got there, and they were polishing quarters because they were going to do a film, and they had to have a bag of silver coins, and the coins weren't looking shiny enough, so they were polishing them with Colgate toothpaste. This was Rosita, who is a weaver, and she also creates these little bags and jackets from the sheep that they grow in their village. And I helped them make a brochure with the map to their village because they weren't getting the market, and they had trouble because they didn't speak Spanish, and we had to have an interpreter that spoke the native tongue as well as Spanish, as well as English for me. This is another one of the village women. And this is a potter from the Montebello area. She works as a potter, and also she demonstrates for tourists when they come through. And this is a tortilla. She's not a factory, she's pretty much a village cook for just tortillas, and they're really delicious. The way she makes them, she puts the ground pumpkin seed in them, and this is really the Mayan kitchen. This is what they all look like. This is the mother and her child shucking corn. Here's a couple of weavers. When you're 14 years old, you should have learned to have completed your training in weaving, and you're now old enough to get married. This is a grandmother who is working on a reboza and taking care of the baby at the same time. This is a woman from the Oaxaca area. She was very proud of her outfit for the day. It was a religious day, and she and her friends were all dressed up and wanted their photographs made. This is a girl doing the Aztec dancing. Her name's Jenny. She's teaching now at Davis. This was a woman from the coca fields, and when I was introduced to her, she offered me some coca leaves, and I wasn't sure what to do with them, and she said, "No, you eat them." And so I ate them, and they were just bitter, and didn't get me high, and I put the rest of them in my pocketbook, and they found them at the immigration office. This is one of her daughters. And this is Jenny, who's working with Rigoberta from Guatemala. This is a girl from the Cuna who came to the conference in Oaxaca. And this is another girl from the Cuna area. These women were there to draw up a request on domestic violence issues, and to have those issues taken by Rigoberto to the indigenous forum that's been formed in the UN. This was one of the elders that came. She was selling rebozas at the conference. She was too poor to, and wasn't offered transportation, so she literally hitchhiked to get there, and was for selling her rebozas when she got there. This is Auntie Pearl, and she has 63 great-grandchildren. She's 94 years old, and she had quite a spirit. And she says to me, "You can photograph me, but I want to look beautiful." So we all persuaded her that she was quite beautiful. This was at the Zapatista March. Back when we went to Mexico, a lot of Native Americans from all over, everywhere, went to Mexico to march with the Zapatistas to demand the rights of the native people be respected, and that the Mexican government put into place the acts that they had passed in their Congress but hadn't managed to do much about. This is another girl at the conference, and she was speaking. And you can see the passion in her. This is my grandson. They were doing some videos on East 7th Street, and, or not videos, but documentaries. And he said to me, "So how come they didn't take care of pictures?" And I said, "Well, they were only going to photograph Reno Thunder." And a couple of days went by, and he was out playing, and some of the guys had talked to him about trapping, and he wanted to just make a trap. So this was his idea of trapping pigeons. This photograph was used with Susan Lobo in Urban Indians in her book. It's a textbook used in colleges nowadays. This was some children that are on a rubber tire swing. And as you can see, there's a lot of joy and a lot of fun going on. This is Teresa. Teresa is a real businesswoman. I showed her photograph yesterday. She wanted her picture taken, and she would pay me by giving me a pot holder. And I was willing to do whatever she wanted because she's so cute. And then when I returned to her village, she was like, "Where is my photograph? I gave you a pot holder." This was at the San Juan Domingo festival, where all the little boys are dressed like San Juan. This little guy is quite a character. He followed me around and kept telling me, "You should take my picture, you should take my picture." So finally I said, "Well, okay, hop up there." And after I took his picture, he says to me, "But you took more than one." And I said, "Yeah." He says, "Well, you have to pay me for every one of them." This is typical of children who are taught to work very, very early. This little boy, he wanted to make sure I knew how to shuck corn. And his sister, precious child. This was another little photograph from Bangkok of the street women's stands. This is a scene from Bangkok beer garden, early morning. This is hats in Mexico and toys and the scarves from Bangkok. And this is a sacred tree in Bangkok. And this is a spirit house. The spirit houses are all over the place because you're supposed to appease the evil spirits outside. So you give them flowers and you give them incense and you give them fruit and you take care of them, and that way they don't come in the house and bother you. This is another one. They're all over the place. If you have that, you have security. This was from a project that I did with Nadima Agard, who was at the Smithsonian and wanted me to do something on the Virgin of Guadalupe. And I said to her, "But I'm not Catholic. I don't know anything about the Catholicism and the Virgin of Guadalupe, and I don't know how I would go about it." So she knew that we were going to the Zapatista March, and she said to me, "When you get to Mexico City, go in to see the Virgin of Guadalupe and see what it suggests to you." So I got out of the subway, and on each side of the street was these people selling candles and images of the Virgin of Guadalupe. And I went into the cathedral, and there's a moving sidewalk that goes left to right, and then there's another moving sidewalk that goes from right to left. So then you get dumped in the basement of the cathedral, where you buy more things about the Virgin of Guadalupe. I wasn't too impressed with the Virgin of Guadalupe's image because it's so high, and I couldn't hardly see it because it's behind glass, and it's way up high. And I decided that the best thing I could do for Nadima and her show was to do some photography of the images in the shop, in the little stands along the road, because to me, the Virgin of Guadalupe was providing a living for the Indian people, and that spoke more to me than the image in the cathedral. This is from Bonaparte. This is one of the ruins. If you haven't seen them, I encourage you to go. It's marvelous to see those ruins and to see how ancient people put together these cities. This is pottery that's big enough to put a kid in, done by the lady that I showed you from Montebello. These are little boats at the lake at Montebello. They're just logs put together. They're no nails. They're just tied together, and the logs then are thrown on top of it and some oars. And they wanted to take me out to the middle of the lake, and I was like, I can't swim. And I really had a hard time trying to convince myself I was going to be okay. These are the boats between the shores of Guatemala and Mexico, Chiapas State. And Indian people are going up and down that river. This is a place where a lot of people cross to come into Mexico and then find their way up to the border. This is the fish. I'm big on taking photographs of just whatever happens to hit my eye. This is Mohawk welder. I did a series for McDonald's. They were promoting staying in school, and they wanted to have a photographer, and they came and asked me if I would do photography and then to tell kids to be sure to stay in school if they wanted to learn to do some skilled job. So this was from that. This is when Susan Lobo was trying to do her book on urban Indians. I sent this as a typical Indian. This is a nightclub performer in New York City at CBGB's. This is a Hopi and Winnebago man who dances for a living in New York City wearing Sioux outfits. And he asked me, he said, I'm getting too old to dance and I'm just going to be playing the drum from now on. So I want you to take my photograph. And this is my last. This is an Indian man from the rear. Thank you.